She had accepted the glorious death beneath the depths of the alien ocean. But each ray of light piercing through the water surface never forewarned that a pair of human hands would pull her back, upending every belief she had ever held. The water embraced Nilarath like a deathly shroud, its cold fingers enveloping her orange skin as she descended into the emerald abyss. The vibrant plasma bolts that had shredded her fighter now danced across the upper atmosphere, their ghostly reflections rippling through the depths. Fragments of her vessel spun and tumbled alongside her, metallic confetti marking her passage to the ancestors. Nilara closed her eyes, letting the current pull her deeper. This was the way of the Athetherin. To die gloriously in battle was the highest honor. Her blood, seeping from the jagged wound across her torso, formed delicate copper tendrils in the water. The pain had begun to dull, replaced by a numbing coldness that crept inward from her extremities. Above, the battle still raged. Athetherin fighters clashed with Drayok warships in violent bursts of light and energy. The ancient conflict over the mineral-rich asteroid belt had escalated once again, bringing both sides to Terrace 3, a verdant waterworld with its thick atmosphere and emerald oceans. Nilara had flown bravely, taken down 3 Drayok vessels before her own had been crippled. Now, as the water filled her lungs, she recited the ancient prayer of passage. Ancestors, guide me through the veil, accept my blood as tribute, my death as honor. White bubbles escaped her lips, floating upward toward a surface growing dimmer by the second. Her white, silver hair billowed around her face like a funeral shroud. The tattered remnants of her silver-gray battlesuit hung loosely from her muscular frame. Her orange skin, once vibrant with life, now paled as her blood drained away. The sounds of battle grew fainter. The explosions, the screaming engines, the death cries of pilots, all muffled by the depths. This was right. This was proper. This was the way of the Athetherin warrior. Her ancestors would welcome her. Nilara felt herself drifting toward unconsciousness, the emerald darkness claiming her vision. Her final thoughts were of her squadron, of the warriors who had flown with her, died with her. They would sing songs of this day. Her body drifted lifelessly as the currents pulled her ever deeper, the cold water of Terrace 3 becoming her tomb. The legend said that warriors who died in battle would see a brilliant light just before the darkness claimed them completely, the light of the ancestors reaching out. Nilara saw that light now, cutting through the water like a blade. So the legends were true after all. She smiled, embracing the brightness, ready for her journey to begin. But something was wrong. The light moved erratically, scanning back and forth across the water. It wasn't the ancestors. It was a searchlight, and it was getting closer. Through her fading consciousness, Nilara sensed a disturbance in the water above her, a shadow moving against the green backdrop of the ocean surface. A vessel, not Athetherin, not Drayok. No, it couldn't be. The shape drew closer, and Nilara felt a surge of anger penetrate her numbing thoughts. She was being denied her glorious passage. Someone was interfering with the sacred moment of her death. A silhouette broke through the water above her, humanoid, extending toward her. Nilara wanted to scream, to fight, to push away whatever sacrilege this was. But her body no longer responded to her will. Her lungs burned, her vision darkened at the edges. The last thing she felt before blackness claimed her was the warm touch of bare human hands grasping her wrists, pulling her upward, away from her ancestors, away from honor, away from death. Consciousness returned in fragments, sharp, painful, unwelcome. First came the clinical scent of antiseptic, then the rhythmic beeping of medical equipment. The stark white light penetrated her eyelids before she even opened them. Pain. That was next. A searing agony across her torso and a throbbing in her left leg that made her gasp involuntarily. The sound of her own voice startled her. She was alive. This was wrong. This was a desecration. Nilara forced her eyes open, squinting against the harsh illumination. She lay on a medical bed, surrounded by human technology. Monitors displayed her vital signs, and tubes ran from her arm to various machines. Her leg was encased in some kind of temporary stabilizing field. "Welcome back," said a calm, deep voice. Nilara turned her head, wincing at the effort. A human male stood at her bedside, tall, with weathered skin and short-cropped hair, the color of Terrace 3's sand. His eyes were a startling blue, like the sky of her homeworld. He wore a simple gray uniform with a medical insignia on the shoulder. "You—" Nilara's voice was raspy, her throat raw from the seawater. "You denied me my death." The human tilted his head slightly. "I prevented you from drowning. Most would say thank you." Fury surged through Nilara, momentarily overriding her pain. "You stole my honor! I was meant to die in glory, to join my ancestors!" She tried to sit up, but gasped as her wounds protested. "Easy," the human said, placing a gentle but firm hand on her shoulder. "You've got 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, internal bleeding, and your left leg is shattered in 17 places. The medical nanites are working, but they need time." "I don't want your medicine," Nilara spat. "I don't want your help. I will return to the ocean and die where I belong." The human sighed, moving to a console nearby. "My name is Elliot Drake, former combat medic with the Earth Alliance. This is my ship, the Nomad, and you're not going anywhere in your condition." "You had no right," Nilara hissed through clenched teeth. "Maybe not," Elliot replied without looking up from the console. "But I couldn't watch someone disappear beneath the waves when I had the power to act." A proximity alarm suddenly blared through the ship. Elliot moved quickly to a communication panel. "Harding," he said urgently. "What's happening?" A gruff voice responded over the speakers. "Driok patrol vessel. They're tracking debris from the battle, sending out a broadcast demanding inspection of all ships in the vicinity." Nilara felt her blood run cold. Driok soldiers would execute her on sight, or worse, take her for interrogation. That would be a true dishonor. "How long?" Elliot asked. 10 minutes, maybe less," Harding replied. "You can hide at Helio Station. I'll clear it with security." "On our way," Elliot turned back to Nilara. "Looks like we both have a problem now." "They will kill you too," Nilara said, her anger briefly replaced by concern for the human who, despite everything, had saved her life. "For harboring an enemy." "Then we better not get caught." Elliot moved to the pilot station. "Can you stand?" "No," Nilara admitted through gritted teeth, "but I can still fight." Elliot shook his head. "No fighting. We're running." He tapped rapidly on the control panel. "I'm going to need your help with the sensor cloak. Athetherans know Driok detection systems better than anyone." Nilara hesitated. Collaboration with a human was unthinkable. Yet the alternative, capture by Driok forces, was worse. At least this way, she might find a path back to her people. "The frequency modulator," she said finally. "Set it to pulse erratically between 1.8 and 2.3 terahertz. It will appear as if the ship is powering down." Elliot's fingers flew over the controls. "What else?" "We need to dive into the thickest part of the atmosphere," Nilara continued, finding herself slipping into tactical mode, despite her reluctance. "The light refraction will confuse their tracking systems." Elliot nodded, adjusting the ship's trajectory. "And then?" "We find a remote landing zone, preferably one with natural formations to mask our energy signature." The Nomad hummed to life around them, engines cycling up as Elliot initiated the launch sequence. Nilara felt the slight pressure of acceleration as the ship lifted from the ocean surface. "Hang on," Elliot said. "This might get rough." The Nomad shot upward, breaking through the water with a jolt that sent waves of pain through Nilara's broken body. She bit back a scream, forcing herself to focus on the tactical display Elliot had activated near her bed. Driok vessel approaching from bearing 047, she warned, reading the scanner. They're launching scanner drones. Initiating frequency modulation, Elliot responded, his hands steady on the controls despite the urgency of their situation. Preparing for atmospheric dive. The Nomad banked sharply, then plunged downward toward the dense cloud layer that surrounded Terrace 3. The ship shuddered as it hit the upper atmosphere, the hull creaking under the sudden pressure change. Divert auxiliary power to forward shields, Nilara instructed. The atmospheric friction will... I know, Elliot cut her off. This isn't my first emergency descent. The view screen filled with swirling clouds as the Nomad plunged deeper into the atmosphere. Warning lights flashed across the control panels, indicating rising external temperatures. The entire ship vibrated as they pushed through dense atmospheric layers. They're following, Nilara warned, watching the tactical display. Adjusting course to pursue? Let them chase, Elliot said, a grim smile playing across his lips. He yanked the controls hard, sending the Nomad into a tight spiral. We're heading for the canyon system near Helio Station. If we can reach it before they lock weapons. Nilara clung to the edges of her medical bed as the ship rolled and dove. Each movement sent fresh waves of agony through her body, but she refused to cry out. The pain was nothing compared to the dishonor of capture. 3 minutes to canyon entrance, Elliot announced, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Driok vessel closing. They're charging weapons, Nilara reported, reading the energy spikes on the scanner. A plasma bolt streaked past the view screen, illuminating the cockpit with an eerie blue glow. Elliot swore under his breath, pushing the Nomad into an even steeper dive. Hold on, he shouted, as another bolt narrowly missed them, superheating the air around the ship. The Nomad shook violently as Elliot pulled up sharply, skimming just meters above the rugged surface of Terrace 3. Ahead, the massive canyon system opened like a wound in the planet's surface. Red-orange cliffs towered on either side, their surfaces glittering with mineral deposits. Entering canyon in 3, 2, 1. The ship shot between the towering walls, entering a maze of narrow passages and shadowed ravines. Elliot's hands moved with practiced precision, guiding the vessel through gaps that seemed barely wide enough to accommodate it. Behind them, the Driok patrol vessel hesitated at the canyon entrance, its bulkier frame ill-suited for such tight maneuvering. They're holding position, Nilara reported, unable to keep a note of relief from her voice. Switching to long-range scanning. We're not clear yet, Elliot cautioned. They'll call for reinforcements. The Nomad continued its frantic journey through the canyon, weaving between stone pillars and ducking under natural arches. After several tense minutes of flight, the narrow passage opened into a wider area dotted with metallic structures. Helio Station, a human mining outpost established to harvest solar energy from Terrace 3's twin suns. Harding, Elliot called into the comm. We're approaching from the South Canyon. Need emergency docking. Bay 4 is clear, came the response. Hurry, we're picking up multiple Driok signatures moving into orbit. The Nomad slipped between the solar array panels, their massive surfaces reflecting the sunlight in blinding patterns. At the center of the installation stood a cluster of modular buildings, one of which was opening to reveal a small landing bay. Elliot guided the ship inside with expert precision, the landing struts extending just as they touched down. The bay doors closed behind them, plunging the cockpit into relative darkness. Made it, Elliot breathed, slumping slightly in his seat. Nilara's vision swam, the adrenaline that had kept her alert now fading. The pain returned in full force, and she couldn't suppress a groan. Elliot was at her side in an instant. The evasive maneuvers reopened your wounds, he said, checking the medical readouts. I need to stabilize you. Why do you care? Nilara asked, her voice weak with pain and confusion. I am your enemy. Elliot prepared a syringe of pain medication. I stopped seeing enemies when I pulled my 20th dead soldier from a battlefield. After a while, everyone just looks like someone who needs help. As the medication entered her system, Nilara felt the pain recede, replaced by a floating sensation. Her thoughts became fuzzy, disconnected. "Rest," Elliot said, his voice seeming to come from far away. "We're safe for now." As consciousness slipped away, Nilara found herself wondering about this strange human who risked his life to save an alien warrior. It made no sense. It violated everything she understood about the way of things. Yet here she was, alive, when she should have been dead. The heat from the engines, the whistling wind through the solar array, the distant rumble of mining equipment. These sensations filtered through Nilara's semi-conscious state. For the first time, a question formed in her mind, unbidden and unwelcome. Was her life truly so worthless that it should be thrown away? The answer did not come before sleep claimed her completely. The rhythmic beeping of medical equipment pulled Nilara back to consciousness. Her eyes fluttered open to find the stark white ceiling of the Nomad's medical bay. The pain in her leg had dulled to a persistent throb, and breathing no longer felt like being stabbed with each inhalation. "The nanites have repaired most of the damage to your lungs," came Elliot's voice from nearby. "Your leg will take longer." Nilara turned her head to see the human medic checking readings on a handheld scanner. "How long have I been unconscious?" "About 6 hours," Elliot replied. "Long enough for the Driok to set up a blockade around the entire station. They know someone escaped the battle." Nilara attempted to sit up, finding it easier than before. "They won't leave until they find me." "Probably not," Elliot agreed, helping her adjust her position. "Harding says they're conducting building-by-building searches, using biometric scanners to identify any non-human life signs." "Then, I have doomed you and your friend," Nilara said, a bitter taste in her mouth. "Perhaps you should have left me in the ocean after all." Elliot met her gaze steadily. "I make my choices. I live with the consequences." A knock at the Nomad's entry hatch interrupted them. Elliot moved cautiously to the security screen, relaxing slightly when he saw who was outside. "It's Harding," he said, pressing the release. The airlock cycled open to admit a stocky human with a weather-beaten face and close-cropped gray hair. Harding wore the practical coveralls of a mining supervisor, with various tools hanging from his belt. "They're getting closer," Harding said without preamble. 3 buildings away. The scanner teams are thorough." Elliot frowned. "How much time?" 2 hours, maybe less." Harding glanced at Nilara. "So this is our Athetheran guest." Nilara straightened as much as her injuries would allow, maintaining her warrior's dignity despite her compromised position. "I am Squadron Commander Nilarath of the Athetheran Vanguard." Harding grunted. "Well, Squadron Commander, your presence has brought a lot of unwanted attention to my operation." "I did not ask to be brought here," Nilara replied sharply. "No, but here you are," Harding countered. "And now we all have to deal with it." He turned back to Elliot. "I've got the security feeds looped in this section, but it won't fool their scanners." Elliot paced the small confines of the medical bay. "We need a diversion." "What about the defensive drones?" Nilara suggested, surprising both humans. "The ones in your cargo hold." Elliot raised an eyebrow. "How do you know about those?" "I saw them on your inventory display," Nilara admitted. 4 Mark 7 security drones, typically used for perimeter defense. "They're not weapons," Elliot clarified. "They're programmed to detect and report intruders, not engage them." "But they have energy signatures," Nilara pressed. "Signatures that could be modified to mimic this vessel." Understanding dawned on Elliot's face. "A decoy!" Nilara nodded, wincing slightly at the movement. "Program them to emit the same frequency pattern as the Nomad. Then, send them flying out of the station in different directions." "The Drayok would have to split their forces to pursue," Harding mused. "It might work." "Not just split forces," Nilara continued, tactical training overriding her earlier reluctance. "We could program one drone to lead the main pursuit force into the northern canyon, Where the unstable cliff formations are. Elliot studied her face. You're suggesting we collapse the canyon on them? A controlled rock slide, Nilara confirmed. Eliminate the pursuit without firing a single shot. Harding whistled low. That's cold calculation. Commander? It's survival, Nilara responded flatly. And it minimizes casualties. A direct confrontation would result in far more deaths, on both sides. Elliot considered for a long moment, then nodded. I'll program the drones. Harding, can you help me get them ready? On it, the station supervisor agreed. But we'll need to move fast. As the two humans left to prepare the drones, Nilara forced herself to stand. Pain shot through her leg, but the medical brace supported her weight sufficiently. She limped to the weapons locker, retrieving a small plasma pistol. If their plan failed, she would not be taken alive. By the time Elliot returned, Nilara had made her way to the cockpit and familiarized herself with the defensive systems. You should be resting, Elliot admonished, though there was little force behind his words. I can rest when I'm dead, Nilara replied, which may be soon if this plan fails. Elliot took the pilot's seat beside her. The drones are programmed. Harding's positioning them now. The ship's communication system crackled to life. Drones in position, Harding reported. Ready when you are. Elliot looked to Nilara. This was your plan. You make the call. Nilara took a deep breath, steadying herself. Launch drones, sequential pattern, 30 seconds apart. On the tactical display, 4 small dots detached from the station, moving outward in different directions. Each emitted the distinctive energy signature of the Nomad. Driok patrols are responding, Nilara observed, watching the larger signatures change course to pursue. The main vessel is following Drone 3, heading toward the canyon as predicted. Preparing to launch, Elliot announced, his hands moving over the controls. Harding, we're taking off. Bay doors opening, came the response. Good luck. The Nomad's engines hummed to life, vibrating through the deck plates beneath Nilara's feet. She gripped the edge of the tactical console, steadying herself as the ship lifted off. Driok forces have split into 3 groups, she reported. 2 smaller patrols following drones, 1 and 2. Main vessel still pursuing Drone 3 into the canyon. Drone 4 is drawing minimal attention. Then we follow Drone 4's path, Elliot decided, guiding the Nomad out of the bay and into the open air. Keeping low and slow to minimize our signature. The ship slipped between the massive solar collectors, using their bulk as cover. Ahead, the rugged landscape of Terrace 3 stretched out, a maze of canyons and plateaus bathed in the golden light of the twin suns. Drone 3 is approaching the target zone, Nilara announced, watching the tactical display intently. Driok vessel still in pursuit. Initiating drone self-destruct sequence, Elliot said, entering commands. 3, 2, 1. On the display, Drone 3's signature flared brightly, then vanished. The resulting energy discharge registered as a massive spike on the sensors. What happened? Nilara demanded. That wasn't the plan. Modified the plan, Elliot explained, eyes fixed on his controls. The drone's explosion will weaken the cliff structure more effectively than just ramming it. Nilara watched as the sensors detected a seismic disturbance. The canyon walls, already unstable, began to collapse inward. The Driok vessel's signature flickered as it attempted evasive maneuvers. But the avalanche was too massive, too sudden. The signature disappeared. Direct hit, Nilara whispered, a strange mixture of triumph and unease washing over her. The Driok vessel is destroyed. Elliot nodded grimly. And we're clear to the southern passage. Engaging main engines. The Nomad surged forward, skimming low over the rocky terrain as it headed away from Heliostation. Behind them, the remaining Driok patrols were still chasing phantom signals, unaware that their quarry had slipped away. We've done it, Nilara said, almost disbelieving. We've escaped without bloodshed. Not without casualties, Elliot corrected soberly. The Drayok vessel had a crew. Nilara fell silent, contemplating this. In her training, enemy deaths were celebrated, counted as honors. Yet this victory felt hollow somehow. The Drayok had been defeated by cunning rather than combat, by a trap rather than direct confrontation. "Where are we going?" she asked, after several minutes of quiet flight. "There's a cave system in the southern mountains," Elliot replied. "We can hide there until the Drayok give up their search." The Nomad soared over a ridge of jagged peaks, then descended into a narrow valley. At the far end, a massive cave mouth yawned in the mountainside, large enough to accommodate the small ship. Elliot guided the vessel inside with careful precision. The cave expanded into a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in shadows. Stalactites hung like stone teeth from above, while the uneven floor was dotted with stalagmites rising to meet them. The Nomad's landing lights activated automatically, casting eerie shadows across the stone formations. Elliot set the ship down on a relatively flat area, then powered down the engines. "We should be safe here," he said, running a system check. "The cave walls contain high concentrations of ferrous minerals. They'll mask our energy signature." Nilara nodded, then winced as pain shot through her leg. The adrenaline of their escape was wearing off, leaving her acutely aware of her injuries once more. Elliot noticed her discomfort. "You need another treatment. The nanites can only work so quickly." He helped her back to the medical bay, supporting her weight as she limped alongside him. As he prepared a fresh injection of medical nanites, Nilara studied him with newfound curiosity. "Why did you leave the Earth Alliance?" she asked abruptly. Elliot paused, surprise flickering across his features. "That's a complicated question." "We appear to have time," Nilara observed dryly. Elliot administered the injection, then began checking her leg brace. "I grew disillusioned with Alliance policies, particularly regarding the Athetheran-Drayok conflict." "What policies?" Elliot hesitated, then moved to a storage compartment. He retrieved a data tablet and handed it to Nilara. "See for yourself," he said quietly. Nilara activated the tablet, scrolling through the files displayed. Her eyes widened as she absorbed the information. Shipping manifests, financial transfers, classified communications, all pointing to a clandestine operation called the Earth Consortium. "This can't be real," she breathed, her hands shaking slightly. "The Alliance is supplying weapons to both sides?" "Not the Alliance officially," Elliot clarified. "The Consortium, a group of corporations and military contractors with powerful political connections. They've been prolonging the conflict for decades." Nilara continued reading, horror mounting with each document. The Consortium had been selling increasingly advanced weapons to both Athetherans and Drayok, ensuring the conflict remained balanced enough to continue indefinitely. Profits soared with each new escalation. "Our sacred war," she whispered, "our generations of honorable deaths, all manipulated by human profiteers?" Elliot's expression was grim. "I discovered some of these files during a medical supply run 3 years ago, when I reported it to my superiors. I was quietly transferred to a remote outpost. 6 months later, there was an accident during a routine patrol. I barely escaped with my life." "So you took the Nomad and disappeared," Nilara concluded. "I've been gathering evidence ever since," Elliot confirmed, hoping to find someone who would listen, someone with the power to end it. Nilara stared at the tablet, her entire worldview crumbling around her. The glorious death she had sought in the ocean seemed hollow now, meaningless. How many of her people had died, not for honor, not for territory, but for the profit margins of distant corporations? "My ancestors," she murmured. "My squadron. We were nothing but puppets." Elliot placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of comfort that would have been unthinkable just hours earlier. "Not puppets, victims. There's a difference." Nilara closed her eyes. listening to the faint vibrations of the cave around them, the echo of water dripping somewhere in the darkness, the hum of the nomad's life support systems. She had always expected her death to be legendary, to be sung about by generations to come. Instead, she was hiding in a cave with a human deserter, learning that her entire existence had been built on a foundation of lies. "What now?" she asked, opening her eyes to meet Elliot's gaze. "That depends," he replied carefully. "I can take you to the nearest Athetheran outpost once the search dies down. You can return to your people." Nilara considered this option. She would be welcomed as a hero, a warrior who survived against impossible odds. She might even be promoted, given command of a larger squadron, sent back into the endless war. The endless, manufactured war. "Or," she prompted. "Or," Elliot continued, "you can help me expose the consortium. Your testimony, as an Athetheran commander, would lend credibility to the evidence. We could present it to the Galactic Council, force an investigation." "That would make me a traitor to my people," Nilara said softly. "Would it?" Elliot challenged. "Or would it make you their savior?" Nilara had no answer. She handed the tablet back to Elliot, her mind churning with conflicting loyalties and shattered beliefs. "I need time," she said finally, "to think." Elliot nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Rest. We're safe here for now." As he moved away to monitor the ship's systems, Nilara settled back on the medical bed, staring up at the ceiling. For the first time in her life, the path before her was unclear. The warrior's code that had guided her every decision now seemed like a cruel joke, a tool of manipulation rather than a beacon of honor. Could she truly turn her back on generations of tradition? Could she face her own people and tell them their sacred war was nothing but a profitable enterprise for humans? Or worse, could she return to the fight, knowing what she now knew, and continue to send warriors to their deaths for a lie? Sleep did not come easily that night, as Nilara wrestled with questions that had no simple answers. In the darkness of the cave, far from the battlefield where she had expected to die, a new understanding began to take root in her heart. Perhaps true honor lay not in dying gloriously, but in living courageously for the truth. The distant rumble of engines pulled Nilara from her troubled sleep. She sat up quickly, wincing as her healing leg protested the sudden movement. "Elliot!" she called, scanning the dimly lit interior of the Nomad. He appeared from the cockpit, his expression tense. "Driak patrols. They're sweeping the mountain range." Nilara swung her legs over the edge of the medical bed, testing her weight. The pain had diminished considerably, and the medical brace provided sufficient support for her to stand. "How did they find us?" she asked, limping toward the tactical display. "They haven't, yet," Elliot clarified. "But they're being thorough. The cave system should mask our signature. But if they decide to land and conduct a ground search..." Nilara studied the scanner readings. Multiple Driak vessels were conducting a grid pattern search of the southern mountains. It would only be a matter of time before they investigated the cave. "We need to move deeper into the cave system," she suggested. "The mineral deposits will provide better shielding." Elliot shook his head. "The Nomad can't navigate the narrower passages. We'd have to continue on foot. Then we take what we need and go," Nilara decided. "Better than waiting to be discovered." Before Elliot could respond, a proximity alarm blared through the ship. The tactical display showed a Driak scout vessel approaching the cave entrance. "They've detected something," Elliot said grimly, moving to the weapons locker. "Probably residual heat from our engines." Nilara joined him, selecting a compact plasma rifle. "We can't outrun them in the open. We need to eliminate the threat." Elliot gave her a sharp look. "You're suggesting an ambush." "I'm suggesting survival," Nilara corrected. "If they report our location, we'll have the entire Driak fleet descending on this cave within hours." A tense silence fell between them as Elliot weighed their options. Finally, he nodded. "What's your plan?" Nilara quickly outlined her strategy. The Dreyok would likely send a small team to investigate the cave before calling for reinforcements. If they could be lured into the right position, the unstable stalactites above could be collapsed, creating a devastating natural trap similar to their canyon gambit. "We use the Nomad's defensive systems to target the ceiling," she explained. "One precise shot should trigger a chain reaction." "And bury the Dreyok team," Elliot finished, his expression troubled. "It's them or us," Nilara said softly. "I don't take pleasure in this, but I see no alternative." The scanner showed the Dreyok vessel landing outside the cave entrance. Life signs detected. A team of 4 soldiers disembarking. Weapons active. "We need to move now," Nilara urged. "Back to the ship." They retreated to the Nomad, Nilara positioning herself at the weapons console, while Elliot monitored the scanner. The Dreyok team moved cautiously into the cave, their helmet lights visible as dancing points in the darkness. "They're approaching the narrowest part of the passage," Elliot reported. 20 meters from optimal target zone." Nilara's fingers hovered over the firing controls, her breath steady despite the tension coursing through her. This was different from aerial combat. There was no glory in this ambush, no honor in killing soldiers who couldn't see their death coming. Yet she did not hesitate. "They're in position," Elliot announced. Nilara fired a single, precise shot at the cave ceiling above the Dreyok team. The plasma bolt struck a massive stalactite, superheating it instantly. With a thunderous crack, the stone formation broke free, plummeting toward the soldiers below. The first impact triggered a cascade effect. Tons of rock crashed down, filling the passage with dust and debris. The life signs on the scanner flickered, then vanished one by one. Silence fell, broken only by the occasional rumble of settling stone. "It's done," Nilara said quietly. "Their ship?" "Automated recall protocol engaged," Elliot replied, watching the scanner. "It's returning to the main vessel." "Without its crew," Nilara added. "That will raise alarms." "We need to be gone before they investigate," Elliot agreed, already moving to the pilot station. "The rockfall has created a natural barrier. They won't be able to follow our exit path." Nilara nodded, a strange hollowness in her chest where triumph should have been. She had killed Dreyok soldiers countless times before, always with a sense of righteous purpose. Now, she felt only grim necessity. "Setting course for the Eastern Cavern," Elliot announced. "There's a secondary exit that should put us on the far side of the mountain range." The Nomad lifted off, navigating carefully through the vast chamber. As they passed the site of the rockfall, Nilara stared at the pile of broken stone that had become a grave for 4 enemy soldiers. "I've never killed like this before," she admitted softly. "Without facing my opponent." Elliot glanced at her, understanding in his eyes. War changes, tactics evolve, but the cost remains the same. They flew in silence through the twisting cavern until a distant point of light appeared, the eastern exit. Elliot increased speed, guiding the Nomad toward freedom. "Scanner shows Dreyok patrols converging on the western cave entrance," he reported. "We have maybe 10 minutes before they realize what happened and start searching for alternate routes." "Where will we go?" Nilara asked. "Helio Station is compromised." "Vidian Station," Elliot replied without hesitation. "It's a trading outpost orbiting Vidian 2, run by people who have every reason to dislike the consortium. We'll find allies there." The Nomad burst from the eastern cave entrance into the golden light of Terrace 3's twin suns. Elliot immediately banked hard, keeping the mountain range between them and the Dreyok search parties. "Setting course for the jump point," he announced. "If we can reach hyperspace before they detect us, we'll be clear." Nilara nodded, her thoughts turning inward as the ship accelerated away from the planet's surface. She had made her decision during those long hours in the cave, wrestling with truths too painful to ignore. "I will help you," she said finally, breaking the silence between them. "I will testify against the consortium." Elliot's hands paused momentarily on the controls. "You understand what that means?" You can never return to your people as you were." "My people deserve the truth," Nilara replied, certainty hardening her voice. "A glorious death means nothing if our war itself is without honor." The corners of Elliot's mouth turned upward in a small, genuine smile. "Then we have a chance." The Nomad climbed higher into Terrace 3's atmosphere, leaving behind the Emerald Oceans, where Nilara had embraced death just days earlier. As the planet receded through the view screen, she felt a weight lifting from her shoulders, the burden of blind devotion, of unquestioned tradition. Whatever awaited her at Vidian Station, whatever dangers lay ahead, she would face them with clear eyes and a newfound purpose, not to die with honor, but to live for truth. The journey to Vidian Station took 3 days of careful navigation through lesser-known hyperspace routes. Elliot was determined to avoid main transit corridors, where Dreok or Ethetheran patrols might intercept them. During this time, Nilara's injuries continued to heal, the advanced medical nanites repairing her shattered leg bone by bone. She spent hours reviewing the evidence Elliot had gathered against the Earth Consortium, financial records, weapons shipment manifests, classified communications. The more she learned, the more her resolve strengthened. Generations of her people had died, not for territory or principles, but to fill the coffers of human weapons manufacturers. "We're approaching Vidian 2, Elliot announced on the morning of the 4th day. "Prepare for real space transition." Nilara joined him in the cockpit, moving with only a slight limp now. Through the view screen, she watched as the swirling tunnel of hyperspace collapsed around them, revealing the gas giant Vidian 2, a massive sphere of swirling amber clouds. Orbiting the planet was Vidian Station, a sprawling collection of interconnected modules that had grown organically over decades. Originally a mining outpost, it had evolved into a haven for those seeking to escape the reach of major powers like the Earth Alliance, the Ethetheran hegemony, or the Dreok Imperium. "Vidian Control. This is Nomad requesting docking clearance," Elliot transmitted. "Authentication code Delta 79 Epsilon." After a moment's pause, a woman's voice responded, "Authentication confirmed. Nomad. Proceed to Docking Bay 17, Level 3. Welcome back, Elliot." "Thank you, Elena," Elliot replied, relief evident in his voice. "We have sensitive cargo." "Understood," came the crisp response. "Security protocols engaged. See you soon." Nilara raised an eyebrow. "Friend of yours?" "Elena Christensen," Elliot explained, as he guided the Nomad toward the designated docking bay. "Former Earth Alliance intelligence officer. Now, she runs operations here at Vidian Station. If anyone can help us present our case effectively, it's her." The Nomad approached the sprawling space station, weaving between communication arrays and docking platforms. Nilara observed the diverse collection of vessels berthed at various ports, merchant ships, private yachts, even a few military craft with identifying marks carefully obscured. "Many refugees here," she noted. Elliot nodded. "Political dissidents, deserters, people who know too much. Vidian Station has become a sanctuary for those who challenge the status quo." The docking bay doors slid open as they approached, revealing a sterile landing area with minimal personnel present. Elliot set the Nomad down with practiced ease, then began the shutdown sequence. "Ready?" he asked, glancing at Nilara. She straightened her borrowed Earth Alliance uniform, the only clothing aboard the Nomad that would fit her tall frame. "As ready as I can be." They disembarked together, Nilara's hand instinctively resting on the small plasma pistol at her hip. The docking bay was eerily quiet, the few technicians present keeping a respectful distance. A slender human woman approached from a side entrance, flanked by 2 security officers. Her platinum blonde hair was cut in a severe style that framed sharp features and calculating gray eyes. Despite her civilian attire, a simple black jumpsuit with the station insignia, she carried herself with military precision. "Elliot," she greeted, her voice warmer than her appearance suggested. "It's been too long." "Elena," Elliot replied, accepting her brief embrace. "Thank you for the discretion." Elena's gaze shifted to Nilara, her expression betraying nothing. "And this must be your sensitive cargo. An Athetheran commander, if I'm not mistaken." Nilara drew herself to her full height, towering over the human woman. "Squadron Commander Nilarath of the Athetheran Vanguard." "Former Vanguard, I presume," Elena responded with a knowing smile. "Given your current company—" "My allegiance remains with my people," Nilara clarified firmly, "which is precisely why I am here." Elena studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. "Very well. Follow me. We have much to discuss, and this isn't the place." They were led through a series of corridors, each with multiple security checkpoints. Nilara noted the sophisticated scanning technology and armed guards. Vidian Station took its security seriously. Finally, they arrived at what appeared to be a conference room, though the heavy shielding and signal jammers visible on the walls suggested it served more sensitive purposes. Inside, 3 figures were already seated around a circular table. Nilara froze in the doorway, her hand moving instinctively to her weapon. At the table sat an elder Drayok, his scaled skin the color of burnished copper, eyes narrowed in obvious displeasure at her arrival. Beside him, a human male in academic robes studied a data tablet with intense concentration. But it was the third figure that caused Nilara's breath to catch in her throat. "Commander Talara," she whispered. The Athetheran officer rose from her seat, her expression as shocked as Nilara's. "Nilarath, you were reported killed in action over Terrace 3. "As were you," Nilara replied. 3 cycles ago at the Battle of Kethis Prime." Talara's mouth twisted in a bitter smile. "It seems death reports are sometimes premature." Elena gestured toward the empty seats. "Please, join us. We have assembled this council specifically to hear your evidence against the Earth Consortium." Nilara hesitated, still processing the presence of both an Athetheran commander and a Drayok elder in the same room without bloodshed. Elliot placed a gentle hand on her arm, guiding her forward. "Commander Talara leads our Athetheran contingent," Elena explained as they took their seats. "Elder Zorash represents Drayok interests, and Dr. Malcolm Weber is our Earth Alliance academic liaison." The Drayok elder, Zorash, fixed Nilara with a piercing stare. "Another Athetheran warrior comes to us with tales of conspiracy," he said, his voice a low rumble. "How convenient." "I have brought evidence, not tales," Nilara replied sharply. Talara leaned forward. "Nilarath was one of our finest squadron leaders. If she believes this human's claims, there must be substance to them." "Or she has been manipulated," Zorash countered. "Weakened by injury, influenced during a vulnerable state." Elliot placed a data drive on the table. "The evidence speaks for itself. Financial records, weapons shipments, classified communications, all pointing to a systematic effort by the Earth Consortium to prolong the Athetheran-Drayok conflict." Dr. Weber connected the drive to the room's projection system. Holographic displays materialized above the table, showing shipping manifests, bank transfers, and intercepted communications. "These documents show weapons shipments to Athetheran outposts in the Kethis sector," Elliot explained, highlighting specific entries. The same week, identical shipments were delivered to Drayok forces in the adjacent Morath system. "Advanced plasma cannons," Nilara added, recognizing the specifications. "The same weapons that shot down my squadron over Terrace 3. More documents appeared, financial records showing payments from both Athetheran and Drayok military funds, flowing through shell companies into consortium accounts. "The pattern is consistent," Dr. Weber observed, scrolling through the data. "Whenever one side gains an advantage, the other receives precisely the technology needed to counter it. The conflict remains perpetually balanced and perpetually profitable." The Driok elder growled, his clawed hands tightening on the table's edge. If this is true, our sacred war of reclamation has been nothing but a game. Not a game, Talara corrected grimly. A business. Nilara stood, drawing all eyes to her. I was raised to believe that dying in battle was the highest honor an Athetheran could achieve. I sought that honor over Terrace 3, embracing death rather than defeat. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. But I have learned that our war, our deaths, have been manipulated by those who profit from our suffering. She met Zarash's reptilian gaze without flinching. Your soldiers have been equally deceived. Elder, we have been killing each other for generations while humans count their credits. A heavy silence fell over the room as her words sank in. Even Zarash seemed affected, his scaled brow furrowing in contemplation. What do you propose? Elena asked finally. Even with this evidence, the consortium's influence runs deep in both the Earth Alliance government and military. We need to present this to the Galactic Council, Elliot suggested. With representatives from both Athetheran and Driok testifying alongside the evidence, they would be forced to launch a formal investigation. Talara shook her head. The Council moves slowly. By the time they act, the consortium could erase all evidence of their involvement. Then we make it public, Nilara declared. Broadcast the evidence across all communication channels. Let every Athetheran and Driok soldier see how they've been used. That would cause chaos, Zarash warned. Centuries of hatred cannot be undone by a single revelation, no matter how shocking. Dr. Weber cleared his throat. Perhaps we need both approaches. A formal presentation to the Council, coupled with targeted information releases to key military commanders on both sides. A ceasefire, Talara suggested suddenly. If both our high commands agreed to a temporary ceasefire while investigating these claims. Impossible, Zarash interrupted. Driok Command would never agree without significant concessions. What about an independent investigation? Elena proposed. A joint committee with equal representation from all three powers, operating under Council oversight, but with accelerated authority. The discussion continued for hours. Strategies proposed and dismissed, compromises reached and refined. Through it all, Nilara remained focused on a single truth. The war that had defined her existence was built on deception. As the meeting finally adjourned, with tentative agreements reached on how to proceed, Nilara found herself standing alone by the viewing port. Beyond the reinforced glass, Vidian 2's swirling clouds created hypnotic patterns against the backdrop of space. Elliot joined her, his reflection appearing beside hers in the glass. You did well in there. Did I? Nilara questioned softly. I have betrayed centuries of tradition, challenged the very foundation of Athetheran honor. You've chosen truth over comfortable lies, Elliot corrected. That requires more courage than dying in battle. Before Nilara could respond, Talara approached them. The older Athetheran commander studied Nilara with a complex mixture of emotions playing across her features. When I was reported killed at Kethis Prime, Talara said without preamble, I was actually captured by a coalition vessel. They showed me similar evidence to what we saw today. It took me weeks to accept it. How did you reconcile it with our teachings? Nilara asked. With the code of the ancestors? Talara's expression softened slightly. I realized that our ancestors would not want their descendants to die for a lie. True honor comes from facing difficult truths, not clinging to comfortable falsehoods. The High Command will resist, Nilara warned. They have built their power on maintaining the war. Some will, Talara agreed. Others will listen, especially when the evidence comes from warriors of your reputation. After Talara departed, Nilara and Elliot remained by the viewport, watching as a small fleet of ships arrived at the station, representatives from various factions responding to Elena's urgent summons. It's beginning, Elliot observed. The coalition is forming. Nilara nodded, a strange sense of peace settling over her. Not the ending I imagined when I flew into battle over Terrace 3. Better than dying alone in an alien ocean, Elliot suggested with a small smile. Perhaps, Nilara conceded, though the ancestors might disagree. What do you think they would say? Nilara considered this question seriously. I think they would say that saving many lives honors them more than sacrificing one's own. In the days that followed, Nilara worked tirelessly with the growing coalition. She recorded testimonials, analyzed military documents, and strategized with Talara on how best to approach the Athetheran High Command. The work was exhausting but purposeful, each day bringing them closer to exposing the truth. Zorash, initially the most skeptical, became one of their strongest advocates after receiving confirmation from Dreyok intelligence sources that supported the consortium allegations. His anger at the manipulation of his people manifested in a fierce determination to hold the humans accountable. A week after their arrival at Vidian Station, Elena called an emergency meeting. Her expression was grave as she addressed the assembled representatives. We've received word that the consortium has learned of our coalition, she announced. They're accelerating weapon shipments to both sides, trying to trigger a major offensive before we can present our evidence. They're going to force a decisive battle, Talara realized. Create so many casualties that neither side will be willing to consider peace. We need to move now, Nilara urged, before more warriors die for their profit. The coalition agreed to an immediate three-pronged approach. Talara would return to Athetheran space with a delegation. Zorash would do the same for the Dreyok, and a joint team led by Elena would present the evidence to the Galactic Council. Elliot and Nilara would accompany Elena, providing first-hand testimony of the consortium's manipulation. On the morning of their departure, Nilara stood in the Nomad's cockpit, wearing a new uniform, neither Athetheran military nor Earth Alliance, but the neutral gray of the coalition. Elliot joined her, similarly attired. Ready? He asked, just as he had when they first arrived at Vidian Station. This time, Nilara's answer came without hesitation. Yes. The Nomad launched alongside Elena's diplomatic vessel, joining a small convoy bound for the Galactic Council headquarters. As they prepared for the jump to hyperspace, Nilara gazed one last time at Vidian Station, the unlikely birthplace of hope in a conflict that had seemed endless. It won't be easy, Elliot said, reading her thoughts. The consortium won't surrender without a fight. No enemy ever does, Nilara replied with the hint of a smile. But this time, we fight for truth rather than territory. As the stars stretched into streaks of light around them, Nilara reflected on the strange journey that had brought her here. She had entered the waters of Terrace 3, seeking a glorious death, only to find a more meaningful purpose in living. The Athetheran Code taught that death in battle was the ultimate honor. But perhaps, Nilara now understood, the greatest honor lay in fighting for peace. We've done what many thought impossible, she said, watching the hypnotic patterns of hyperspace unfold before them. We've built a bridge between two species that have known only hatred for centuries. Elliot reached across the console, his hand finding hers. And this is just the beginning. Nilara nodded, squeezing his hand gently. Though the war was not yet over, though the consortium still wielded considerable power, a new hope had been kindled, a hope that future generations of Athetherans and Dreyok might know something other than endless conflict. The battle ahead would be fought not with plasma cannons and fighter squadrons, but with truth and testimony. It would require different kinds of courage, different kinds of strength. But as the Nomad carried them toward an uncertain future, Nilara felt ready to face whatever challenges awaited. She had accepted death once, believing it to be her destiny. Now she embraced life, with all its complexities and possibilities. And somehow, that felt more honorable than any glorious death could ever be.